Then we were on to Georgina yesterday morning. So Georgina, her parents were travelling to Berlin for her dad's 60th birthday. They went over to Berlin for the jazz. And they were to leave on Friday morning. They booked this trip in May. And they paid for their flights in May. And they turned up at the airport last Friday to be told they were on standby. That's the first problem. Then their luggage went missing. They were going from Cork to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Berlin with KLM, and then, of course, the luggage goes missing in between. Georgina was on the phone to us this morning and said the bag is now en route to Berlin. Parents are back in Cork, and the suitcase is living its best life. It's going to Berlin. Hopefully, eventually, it'll get back here. However, let's deal with one or two of those issues. Eoghan Corry, the editor of Air and Travel magazine. Let's jump to that one straight away, Eoghan. Georgina's mum and dad booked their tickets, booked their flights and paid for their flights in May. They turn up at the KLM desk in October to find they were in standby. How the hell does that happen? Good morning.
Good morning. I think we've a few minutes of the morning left. Welcome to the crazy world of aviation. Overbooking is standard. They would overbook by 10, 11 seats on some flights, and they do it all the time, and they calculate that people don't show up. And it's really interesting because it's an evolving situation, PJ. Not every airline does it. The airline we fly most with in Ireland, Ryanair, does not overbook at all. They say your seat is paid for, it's there for you. But the tradition in aviation has been that a large number of people fail to show up for flights. And airlines usually get away with overbooking by a small number, and they calculate what the frequency of the no-shows on the route. That's the phrase they use. It's used as a verb as well in aviation. And then when it goes wrong, they have a problem. How do they solve it? The Americans famously offer money to people. They say, there's a sort of a gambling thing when you wait at the gate and they say, we'll give you $50. It goes up to $100. It goes up to $200. And they also give you an alternative flight. I suspect that the overbooking policy for this airline really is built for somewhere other than Cork, because it generally happens at big hub airports where people miss connections all the time.
Yeah, they had a problem with their connection ongoing as well, because they found that the standbys had gone right through on standby. But again, these were tickets they paid for in May. Very frustrating, Owen.
Hugely frustrating. The EU and the consumer wants to get rid of it altogether. It's one of the dafter ends of the industry, and you find it with the legacy airlines, the Air France, KLM, IAG, British Airways, Lufthansa. You don't find it, as I say, with Ryanair.
Interesting you should say that. For all the things people give out about Ryanair, they don't do this.
They never have. Now, the thing also is very important that usually in America, they let you through to the gate, and then they start solving the overbooking problem. In Ireland, they don't let you pass check-in. Right. The European consumer people have worked to say, do not overbook, but the airlines persist in doing it because an awful lot of their flights are outside Europe. As I say, the big hubs, Paris, Charles de Gaulle, Heathrow, Amsterdam, that's where they generally get away with. I've been seriously overbooked. I remember being overbooked. I was 23rd on the waiting list in Mexico City to get to a connecting flight, and I got on board. That's how many people fail to show very often in these situations. Right. So it does work for them, but when they get it wrong, it's the consumer that ends up in the very bad situation. Yeah. Once you're on, you've had a problem with your check-in to start with, your bag can't be put on board for security reasons until you're on board. If you finally, you get on board at very short notice, the bag sometimes doesn't get loaded. The baggage with the overbooking problem is then compounded with the baggage problem, getting the bag on board when the passenger is finally accommodated. Sometimes you don't know you're on board until the gate's about to close. That's happened to me on more than one occasion. If
you have a printed boarding pass, this has just come in on the phone, Owen, if you have a printed boarding pass, surely you can't be overbooked. You have a printed boarding pass in your hand.
And that certainly is true when you check in and you get your boarding pass. Now, people who have checked in online, generally you're safe. But I've heard of cases where the online boarding process has not worked. Now, there are other things that happen. I don't know what the airline situation is in this, but quite a regular thing to happen is that the aircraft is substituted by another one. So you could end up with particularly, Ryanair have the same size, the same number of seats in every aircraft. What tends to happen is that a smaller aircraft is put on the route. So that's where it really pushes the overbooking.
Okay, it's unfortunate, but it's a thing. Eoghan, thank you. Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. It is overbooking. They all do it, with the exception of the one they all complain about. Ryanair don't do it at all. Thank you, Eoghan. Maybe that answers some questions.